I'm Liz Faublas, and this is Currents. With the situation getting even worse for Christians in northern Nigeria, we get a first-hand account of what's happening on the ground. Plus, threats to religious freedom of a much different nature here in the U.S.
This is as much about contraception as the American Revolution was about tea. It's a different issue. This is freedom. We're talking about freedom of conscience, freedom of religion.
And young people pitch in at a popular charity.
This is a very unique opportunity to volunteer at a place like this around the Madonna House and really give back to young people and give back to families.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Deadly violence in northern Nigeria this week as 27 people were killed in 3 separate attacks. It's believed to be the work of Boko Haram, the Islamist militant group whose goal is to establish an Islamic state in Nigeria. On April 29th, the group carried out an early morning attack on a Christian church service. And at the same time a separate attack on Catholics was taking place, other members of the sect attacked an outdoor Protestant church service. In total, more than 900 people have been killed over the past 2 years, the result of efforts by Boko Haram to eliminate all Christians in northern Nigeria. Catholic Relief Services, the official international humanitarian agency of the U.S. Catholic community, has been offering support in the region. Christopher Bessie is in the country. He's the country representative for CRS's Nigeria program. He is currently in Nigeria, and I spoke with him earlier today about the escalating violence. Chris, how long have you been in the region, and what exactly is your role with CRS in Nigeria?
I'm the country representative, and I've been in country for 4 months now.
Now, where in Nigeria is the violence most prevalent right now? Is it in Nigeria's highly religiously and ethnically diverse Middle Belt? Is that where we're looking at most of the violence?
No, actually, right now the violence is concentrated in the north, in the city of Kano and Maiduguri.
And with regard to your role there, on a day-to-day basis, what exactly are you doing in order to help the humanitarian efforts out there right now in Nigeria?
Well, there are actually multiple aspects to the humanitarian crisis. The violence is part of that, but there's also a food insecurity crisis that is affecting the entire Sahelian region. And we are working with our local partners as well as other NGOs to try to raise the profile on the food insecurity, which is compounded by the violence and the insecurity that is created by Boko Haram.
And Chris, the concerns now are there may be an interreligious war brewing. Representatives of the Christian Association of Nigeria saying that they are issuing a final call to the Nigerian government to defuse this problem. They're also saying that the church leadership has shown great restraint so far, but can no longer guarantee such cooperation if the trend of terror is not halted immediately. Are you aware of any retaliatory efforts that are brewing right now?
No, and I think the majority of church leaders, especially the church leadership of the Catholic Church, are calling on their parishioners and worshipers to refrain from retaliatory or any form of violence, because the violence against Christians is perpetrated by a very fringe minority group, this Boko Haram, and the church leadership of the Catholic Church are actually working with the Muslim leaders to try to reduce the incidents from Boko Haram.
Chris, the British Foreign Minister for Africa has been condemning attacks on Nigerian media in the region, saying that the independent press is an integral part of any society and Nigerian journalists should feel able to report freely without fear of violence. Are there any more visible attempts to silence the press and the media in that region?
Yes, just last week in the capital, not far from our office, the offices of This Day, a local newspaper, were bombed, both here in the capital, Abuja, as well as Kaduna, and several people were killed. And Boko Haram said they bombed the offices in retaliation because they judged that the journalists weren't representing Boko Haram correctly.
Since the beginning of the year, as many as 35,000 people have fled their homes in northern Nigeria. From your vantage point, where do they go, and is there any hope of them returning once the situation has eased?
Well, the information we've received from local dioceses are that the displaced populations are moving out of their neighborhoods and home areas temporarily, usually for a few days or a week, and then they're returning to their homes once they feel secure. And this has been going on for several months, if not years, as the violence approaches different communities.
And Chris, one final question. What is the greatest challenge for Catholic Relief Services and churches out in Nigeria right now? And what are you doing to overcome those challenges?
Well, the greatest challenges are the extreme poverty and the lack of transparent governance, which leads to poor services, which in turn leads to the violence. So we're hoping that by helping communities develop their livelihoods, that they'll turn away from violence.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. We really appreciate your giving us some insight about what's happening in the region. He's Christopher Bessie. He's with Catholic Relief Services. Chris, our prayers are with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, the Vatican has condemned what it calls terrorist attacks on Christians in Kenya and Nigeria and has urged restraint against a cycle of violence. Meantime, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has said that the U.S. is concerned about attacks on churches, news media, and government installations that increasingly target innocent civilians across northern Nigeria. She encouraged support for those who recognize Nigeria's ethnic and religious diversity as one of the country's greatest strengths. Stay tuned for the day's top headlines. Currents is back right after the break. Welcome back to Currents. I'm Liz Faublas. An al-Qaeda official saw Catholics as, quote, fertile ground for conversion. That's according to declassified documents allegedly discovered at Osama bin Laden's Pakistani hideout. The Combating Terrorism Center, a privately funded research base at West Point Academy, posted the documents on its website. In a 2011 letter to bin Laden, American-born al-Qaeda spokesman Adam Gudon wrote that Catholics, particularly those in Ireland, would be ripe for conversion to Islam. Gudon encouraged bin Laden to use public anger over the sex abuse scandal to encourage Irish Catholics to convert. In other news, the bishops of New York State are urging state legislators to raise the minimum wage. In a statement, the bishops cite data showing that a full-time minimum wage worker with a family of 3 is more than $4,000 below the poverty line. The bishops say that while they do not question the intentions of those who oppose an increase, they say raising the minimum wage is a matter of fairness. In this statement, the bishops also credit state legislators with bringing a new era of competence and cooperation to Albany. Helping the poor makes good sense. Those words from South Carolina's bishop. In an editorial for the Post and Courier, Charleston Bishop Robert Aguglielmoni says poverty-focused foreign assistance programs account for less than 1% of the federal budget. The bishop says that while they have almost no impact on the country's fiscal problems, they demonstrate the commitment of the U.S. to the global common good. Guglielmoni says that for him, helping the poor is a moral choice. The bishop is a former priest of the Diocese of Rockville Center. He was ordained the Bishop of Charleston in 2009. His diocese comprises the entire state of South Carolina. Closure in Philadelphia for a group of priests and abuse victims. Philadelphia Archbishop Charles Chaput announced that 3 priests previously accused of abuse were found to be suitable for ministry. 5 others were found unsuitable. They have the right to appeal their cases to the Vatican. The 8 priests were part of a group of 26 from the Philadelphia Archdiocese who were placed on administrative leave last year following a grand jury report. In a statement, the Philadelphia Archdiocese says decisions on the fate of the priests were made following a rigorous investigative process. Archbishop Chaput says the review process was designed to ensure a commitment to protect children, assist victims, restore the integrity of the priesthood, and give people confidence that the church is making the right decisions. Now, the Archbishop says the most important lesson from the scandal is that the people who suffer the most are the victims. The two men facing off in the 2012 presidential race are neck and neck. According to the latest numbers from Gallup, 46% of Catholics want to give President Obama 4 more years, while the same numbers say they're behind challenger Mitt Romney. The results are similar to that of Americans overall, with Obama leading Romney by just a percentage point. Gallup broke down the Catholic numbers even further. Non-Hispanic white Catholics support Romney at 55% compared with 38% for Obama. Meanwhile, Hispanic Catholics are overwhelmingly in Obama's corner at 70% compared to just 20% for Romney. Well, when it comes to the ministry and person of Pope Benedict, what's the real story? As we hear from Rome Reports, a Swiss author attempts to get to the bottom of it all.
As a public figure, there are many perceptions that people automatically associate to a pope. Over the years, Benedict XVI has been said to not have a strong connection with young people, especially when compared to his predecessor. Others also say he is much more oriented toward liturgy than personal relationships. So now these different points of views have been collected and analyzed by Swiss journalist Mario Galgano in his new book titled 100 Prejudices about Benedict XVI. In it, he attempts to shed light on some of these criticisms.
When Benedict XVI was elected 7 years ago, I heard so many prejudices, so I became interested in them and started to collect them as a journalist, and I got the idea of writing a book.
The book is divided into 3 categories. The first is about Benedict XVI as a person, the second on the theology of the Pope, and the third on his magisterium.
There are 100 prejudices that I try to correct. I don't confirm them, but this does not mean that the Pope is perfect, which he says the same thing. Benedict XVI says he is human, with strengths and weaknesses. Because it is to be human, you can't be perfect, but accept criticism while staying positive.
For now, the book is only in German and French, but Galgano has plans to release it in Italian, English, and Spanish. His hope is to offer a contrast to the negative opinions often published in the media. To get to the bottom of each one of these opinions, the Swiss author interviews many of the people that work with the Pope on a daily basis.
I went to primary sources, people who best know the Pope, those who work with him. These are his closest collaborators, people living with him and that know his habits, his life, his way of working and thinking.
Galgano gave Benedict XVI the German and French version of his book. In fact, the author said the Pope thought the idea was unique, especially since it focused on his personal criticisms. It's a book that offers an inside look at the real Benedict XVI.
Stay tuned. There's more currents ahead. Coming up, bishops call for a fortnight of freedom. We go into the deep to hear more about it.
Period from the Feast of St. Thomas More to the 4th of July, that 2-week period, is a time when we're trying to let people demonstrate their support for religious freedom.
Welcome back. Our First Most Cherished Liberty. That's the title of a document released by U.S. bishops last month addressing a number of concerns they see as threats to religious liberty. At the top of that list, the Health and Human Services mandate requiring most religious organizations to provide contraception, sterilization, and some abortion-inducing drugs in their employee health plans. The bishops also cite Catholic foster care and adoption services being forced to shut down in some states because they will not place children with same-sex couples. The bishops are calling on Catholics to take action in the form of a fortnight for freedom. It's a 2-week period in which Catholics are asked to mobilize in prayer and action for religious liberty. To hear more about that and explore the issue further, our news director, Ed Wilkinson, spoke with Brooklyn Bishop Nicholas DiMarcio. Here now is this week's Into the Deep.
Bishop DiMarcio, welcome to the studio.
Good to be here again.
So the U.S. bishops have issued another document about our most cherished freedoms here in the United States. And of course, it was brought on because of some of the provisions of the Obamacare legislation. The bishops this time have asked for resistance to unjust laws. What do they mean by that?
Well, again, a law can be unjust because it has some kind of defect in it as far as it was passed. Here we feel that this mandate that's part of the HHS provisions for the health care is unjust because it violates conscience. It violates the conscience of the church because we're being forced to pay for procedures that we believe are immoral. Contraceptives, sterilization, and abortifacient drugs. So here, this is where we need to resist a law that is in the violation of our conscience.
Yeah. Do you think we're getting our message across, though? Because we want to talk about this as an issue of religious freedom, and still you hear in the media that this is an issue about women's health care and women's rights.
Well, that's what you're here. But I heard one comment, not sure who made it, but this is as much about contraception as the American Revolution was about tea. It's a different issue. This is freedom. We're talking about freedom of conscience, freedom of religion. It's not about contraception. It just happened to be the issue that brought it about. But the real fact is that you're forcing people to do what they don't want to do, or what they believe is against their faith and conscience. That's a pretty basic First Amendment right.
Sure. Is there a feeling that if we comply with this law, that the next thing will be that they'll force us to be paying for abortion and things like that?
Well, there's no question about it. If this can be done with basically looking at a moral principle of indirect cooperation, since you're not directly paying for this, you're indirectly paying for it, it's okay. But that's a moral theory, and it doesn't apply in this case, but that's what's being actually applied by the government to this situation.
Mm-hmm. And of course, President Obama says he's tried to make an accommodation to the bishops, where the church agencies would not have to pay directly for these things, but we don't see it as an accommodation.
No, it's an indirect cooperation, but you cannot indirectly cooperate in something that is evil, and this is evil as we see it. And this is not something that we can let happen. Secondly, I think if you look at it, no one is forced to work for the church. Mm-hmm. They know what our position is. If they don't wish to work for us, or they know that we don't provide certain things, well, they're free not to work for us. Mm-hmm. There's another freedom there, too. This is not indentured slavery. Mm-hmm. We're not the U.S. government with our employees that seem somehow to be indentured slaves, or in a certain sense. But so, I mean, I just do feel this is a very, very tacky situation we're in, and that it's being fostered by those who would like to see the church not have any influence even over their own people. Mm-hmm. Again, the polls, well, people don't care about it. Well, that doesn't make any difference. What people care, don't think, that's different. Mm-hmm. That's polling. Morality does not depend on public opinion.
Mm-hmm. Do you see this as an issue in the presidential campaign, or do you think this is going to get lost in the economics?
I think it will be an issue for some people that are understanding of their faith and what the issue is. For some, it may not be an issue. But I think for many people, it will be an issue when they understand that the government really, with good intentions, because they believe contraceptive and that's part of women's health, has to be foisted on everybody. That's where the problem is. It's truly a misunderstanding of some values and of religious freedom, clearly.
The bishops have called for a fortnight of freedom. They're calling for prayer and reflection. Right. What do you hope to see happen here in the diocese and in parishes?
During that 2-week period from the Feast of St. Thomas More, who gave his life, it was the Chancellor of the Realm in England, but when he stood up to the King, he paid with his life, to the 4th of July, that 2-week period. It's a time when we're trying to let people demonstrate their support for religious freedom, and that's important. We're not demonstrating against the government, but we're demonstrating for religious freedom and making people understand what it is. I mean, that's what the 4th of July is about, mm-hmm. The independence from tyranny. And we see this as a new tyranny of a government that is really not respecting the religious rights of its people.
Well, I'm sure it's an issue we'll return to time and again, Bishop. And thanks so much for being with us today.
You're welcome.
And stay right there. There's more Currents ahead. When we return for this charity, it's all about the family.
You are giving so much by being here for these families, feeding them. They don't have to worry about food. They don't have to worry about eating. They don't have to worry about finding the money to eat.
And finally tonight, if we ask you for the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the name McDonald's, there's a good chance you'll say Quarter Pounder, Golden Arches, and of course, Ronald McDonald. But the fast food restaurant chain, the largest in the world, is about more than food. It also knows something about giving back. McDonald's is the largest corporate donor to Ronald McDonald House Charities, which operates houses around the world where families of pediatric patients can stay. And as a way of giving back, last weekend, the young ambassadors of the Brooklyn Diocese Vicariate of Black Catholic Concerns did a day of volunteer service at a Ronald McDonald House on Long Island.
Today we're here at the Ronald McDonald House. Normally what happens is different people from different areas of the country come into the Ronald McDonald House, and as their family are being treated at a hospital, they can come here and have a safe environment. They're able to eat here, have a meal here, shower, and actually stay here and rest.
So this house, for all who come here, everything here has to be like in their home, so they don't have to go out and try to navigate the area, navigate restaurants, who can afford that. So this has to be their home. Everything here is for the residents.
It's a beautiful gift that Ronald McDonald's House give to those who are in the hospital and to those families who are really taking care of and want to take care of the young people, because to be displaced from your house can be very difficult.
Sometimes a parent doesn't really want to leave the kid all night. Right. But they need a little bit of respite. They can come here for like 3 hours. They can take a shower, take a nap, and go back refreshed.
And today we're here to do our community service project, and we're going to be here to help feed the residents or serve the residents. The menu simply today is going to be, it's a brunch, so it's a little bit of breakfast and a little bit of lunch. So we're going to make spaghetti with meat sauce, and we're going to make bacon, egg, and cheese with pancakes.
Well, I joined the Ambassadors program because when I learned about that it was great for development of young persons, I felt like doing it would keep me occupied doing positive things in my community and for others.
I get a sense of pride and also a sense of helping others because I love to help others. And also that person gets to know that there's someone who actually cares about them out there. They feel like they're getting lots of help. So.
This is a very unique opportunity to volunteer at a place like this, a Ronald McDonald House, and really give back to young people and give back to families, and how important that is in today's day.
You benefit morally, and you get to develop yourself, you get to become a changed person. It really does change you afterwards, and it also brightens someone's day. They give them a positive outlook on their future, and it really does impact them for maybe the rest of their lives.
You are giving so much by being here for these families, feeding them. They don't have to worry about food. They don't have to worry about eating. They don't have to worry about finding the money to eat.
After experience given, I definitely hope that the young people will continue in the future as they grow into adulthood, continue to give back to the community, because that's very important. We all need each other, and to give back for such a great cause is a wonderful thing.
And that is all for this edition of Currents. Be sure to visit us online at currentsny.net. We are also on Facebook and Twitter. For all of us here at Currents, I'm Liz Faublas. Thank you for watching and have a good night.